Chapter 13. 2 parcels, no address. A young man with ginger hair hanging in a tail behind his neck examined them from across the bare wooden table. His face was serious but not unfriendly. Miss Police Business had brought him into the room where they'd been waiting nervously. "This is the emergency social worker," she began. "Hello, I'm Robert." He bowed his head slightly forward in a greeting. "I'd like you to come with me. I think you need somewhere safe to stay for the night," he continued in a soft, unhurried voice. "I shall try and find something for you. Is that okay?" Sade looked at Femi. Neither had spoken from the time the police arrived at the video shop. Since their journey in the police car, Femi's body had become almost rigid. His eyes avoided his sister, but Sade knew he would follow whatever she did. She tapped his hands lightly as they stood up and, without a word, walked in silence to the door. Sade didn't even try to take in where they were going as they were driven away. Outside, everything was strange and threatening. Darth Vaders in alleys, thieves, vandals, crazed people, police who might lock you up because you couldn't tell them who you were, or who your parents were, or where you lived. Sade knew they would certainly be asked the same questions again. At the moment, she and Femi were like 2 parcels with no address. They could end up anywhere. The car pulled up at a low building, squashed between 2 gloomy blocks of flats. Most of the building was in darkness, but there were lights in the entrance and inside a couple of windows. The children trailed behind Robert with the hair tail along empty corridors to an office. Inside was a desk scattered with papers next to a computer, some comfortable chairs and a box of toys in one corner. He pointed to the chairs and asked if they would like a hot drink. Sade and Femi each gave a small nod as he didn't press them to speak. Left on their own, they could hear bits of his conversation on the telephone next door. Sade picked out the opening phrase. "We're looking for a temporary foster home." She lost track after the first few calls. Femi was half asleep already, curled up over the rucksack on his knees. After sipping her hot chocolate, Sade closed her eyes. The next she knew was that they were being gently shaken. Robert Hairtail was telling them something about a lady who was willing to take them in for a night or two. "It's only temporary. Mrs. Graham has a boy of her own and takes care of twins. I'm afraid you'll have to share their bedrooms." "Not ideal, but I know you'll be safe and warm with Mrs. Graham while we explore how best to help you." "Okay. Are you ready to come?" Sade had to make a real effort to pull herself out of the chair. If only they could have been just left to sleep where they were in this office with hot chocolate, toys, and scattered papers. It was going to be much more scary to be taken into some strange person's home. Worse still, to share some unknown person's bedroom. She was sure Femi was thinking the same thing. His head was completely bowed as he hauled himself up. Getting up looked even more painful for him than old Baba Akin at family house, shifting his ancient bones. "I know it's difficult, but you'll be fine with Mrs. Graham." Robert Hairtail seemed concerned to reassure them. Mutely, they followed him back out of the building. Once again, the car became a capsule travelling to some unknown destination. It turned out to be a massive block of flats along an almost deserted road. The dull glow from street lamps and the ceiling lights above narrow open passageways cast eerie shadows. The lift was out of order, and they had to walk up some poorly lit stairs. An awful smell of stale urine slunk in the corners. "Be careful where you step. Sometimes there's glass," Robert warned them. Sade felt Femi pictured a little closer to her. In Lagos, there were flats that looked stained and dirty like this, but they had never been inside them. All their relatives and friends lived in houses. Mostly houses and spacious compounds with yards and lawns, trees, flowers and fruits. She did not remember ever discussing who lived in the crowded, stained-looking flat with Papa or Mama. She just assumed that there must be very poor people. What kind of place was this where Robert Hairtail was bringing them? On the 5th floor, he branched off down the passage and knocked softly at number 59. A short, plump, white woman opened the door. Her mouse-coloured hair was drawn back from her face by a pink band. "This is Mrs. Graham," said Robert. "Come in quick, it's freezing out there," said Mrs. Graham, greeting them. As Sade stepped into the small room with a table on one side and sofa and chairs on the other, her first thought was that it looked clean and not at all dirty like the stairs. At least that was a relief. "Robert says they don't know your names," continued Mrs. Graham. "What am I going to call you then?" Sade and Femi remained silent. Well, there's always tomorrow. You can tell us then, when you've had a bit of a rest, eh?" "They're tired, all right," said Robert. "We'll leave all the talking until the morning. One of the children's team will come over." "Looks like they've been places. Know what I mean? I'll show them their bed straight away. Kevin?" A boy about Sade's age dragged himself off the leather-like sofa in front of the television. Sighing loudly, he ambled over to them. "This is my son, Kevin." Sade's eyes flicked between the smiling mother and the unsmiling boy. There was a strong likeness between the two of them. The boy shared his mother's plump cheeks and narrow forehead, but not her pale complexion and green eyes. His skin was distinctly light brown and his hair dark, short and curly. For a fleeting moment, Sade wondered about Mr. Graham, but Robert Hairtail had no mention of him. "Take this young man to your room, Kevin. Give him the bottom bed and you move up top. Mind you show him how the bathroom on the way." Protest was written all over Kevin's face. "Oh, Mum, he always gives me grief. Why can't he sleep with the twins?" "I've told you already. The girl is going to sleep with the twins. There's not even enough room to swing a cat in there. Now get moving." Kevin kissed his teeth and muttered something under his breath. Sade saw Femi's jaw set. She half expected him to refuse to go. To do this, "I'm staying here till I'm satisfied" at. But Femi was so tired that when Kevin brushed past him, he tramped behind him without a word. 10 minutes later, when Mrs. Graham showed her to her camp bed, Sade hardly noticed the small shapes on the other two beds, fitted at right angles to each other. Mrs. Graham handed over an oversized T-shirt. "Sleep tight," she said. "This'll do as a nightie if you need one." Sade suddenly felt so limp that it took all her energy just to tug off her shoes, climb into the bed and pull a quilt over her. Mrs. Graham's T-shirt slid off the bed onto the floor.